Hey guys, Marcus Dillon with Dillon CPAs. I'm excited to share with you today. There has been so much misinformation and just confusion in the world around us today. Where we're at with the COVID response, shelters in place, SBA loans, FMLA expansion, it makes your head spin. And as your trusted resource, one of your trusted resources and your advisor, we feel that it's our place to help educate you. And so today I'm inviting a friend of mine, Greg Martin with BB&T out of College Station, to kind of share a few minutes with me and speak into what we're seeing as far as the SBA, how it currently, what has passed already as of today is Wednesday, March 25th. Days go by pretty fast right now, but what has passed, what we see as coming out in the next few days is this additional stimulus has been passed through House and Senate and will be signed by the president, we assume. But just speaking into some of the misinformation around SBA loans, who can qualify for those. But I'm going to allow Greg to kind of introduce himself and give his background too. So.
Well, Marcus, thank you for allowing me to come and join you today and to speak with you and the entrepreneurs that you serve. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you to the entrepreneurs. I know that the last month has been probably some of the most trying times that you've had in your entrepreneurial career. I know Marcus and I were talking, and this is something that we've never dealt with before as supporters or advisors to entrepreneurs. So you guys are doing the hard work. You guys are out there every single day having to make tough calls on who to talk to, who to pay, who to actually kind of work through. You're having to on the fly shift and recreate the vision for your business and where you want to go. And that's hard work in the best of times. This is extremely difficult. So I want you to hear loud and clear from me that I'm very appreciative of what you do, because there is so much that this country stands for, and the strength of this country is firmly on your backs. I don't think that you hear it enough that it is difficult, but damn, you guys are so impressive, and you are very, very powerful and creative. And that's what I really love about working with y'all. So thanks for letting me share even a little bit of advice and insight today.
Yeah. And Greg, you've been, we've had kind of some mutual events and everything like that. You're based out of College Station, work for BB&T and have for years. I know your background in military and everything like that has kind of led you to where you feel you're at a good space in life too. And how many years in banking have you been in kind of that role?
So I'm coming on 14 years in banking. So I graduated Texas A&M and joined the Army on December 15th of 2001. So my professional career, the last, or one of the last major financial crises that happened after 2001, I was in the Army. So I wasn't necessarily part of the banking world in that point. I spent 4 years in the Army, came off active duty in 2005, 2006, joined BB&T in 2006 and worked for them until until November of 2008. So as the financial world was melting down, I got called back into the Army. So I wasn't in banking. It's like, man, this is really tough. I'd rather go to Iraq instead. But then I did come back in 2009. And so really, and that's where the heart of what I do, really, where I cut my teeth, was going and talking with entrepreneurs who were in the middle of 2008 and kind of dealing with the long-term effects of that. And so really to be able to work with them through a very tumultuous time, but then as times got better, to then be able to move back home to Texas, to College Station, and then to be able to really define how I think bankers really need to help serve their clients, to be able to, I know both of us are certified profit first professionals, and to be able to say, okay, man, I tell you what, Marcus, if you thought I was talking about profit first a lot before, that is gonna be a drum that I beat so loud, because having cash on hand, having a reserve, just gives you so much flexibility. And no one could, I don't care who you are, no one could have predicted this a
No,
year ago.
yeah, and
And
I think that's a great point. You know, as entrepreneurs, as owners of our businesses, if you haven't read that book, I mean, and you've got some time right now, obviously go read Profit First. We've implemented that system with so many businesses. And, you know, over the last couple of weeks, all the phone calls I've had, just to kind of help people navigate the next few weeks or months, those guys that are on Profit First, man, they've got so many more options because they've got cash.
yeah,
And so I think definitely believe in that book and model. You do, I know, as well. And you know, I think where we're at today, it's we don't want to make any short-term decisions that could affect long-term detriment
right.
of our lives or
Exactly.
our businesses. But what can we be working on to set us up for future success? And I think part of what you've done in the last few days over the weekend, whenever that was shot, you actually went through the SBA website, applied for a loan as if you were one of our entrepreneurs, one of our business owners. And, you know, kind of backing up, we love working with you and BB&T. You know, BB&T serves so many different industries and so many different entrepreneurs. You aren't isolated to just the healthcare or medical or dental or even vet space.
Yep.
You kind of see everything construction related. You see it all. And so we feel that it's appropriate to kind of have you on board because you can speak to so many broad clients and whoever else might see this and take a little bit of truth away. And that's why, you know, I appreciate you. I appreciate our relationship. And so I think the main thing is we're going to put that link. I've shared it with other clients that are, you know, considering going and filing for an SBA loan where you actually went through and, hey, this is what you need. Whenever that SBA website is actually running and working, this is going to make that process a lot easier at 11 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning, whenever it comes back online.
That's
So
the best time. Yep.
yeah, but you know, with
So,
what we're seeing today, with the new bill passed, you know, House and Senate approval and potentially about to be signed into law, this stimulus, this third leg, if what they're calling it, this $350 billion that's going to go to small businesses.
correct.
We think that the amount of people that go and apply for an SBA loan is going to only increase from here on out. I think you can agree with that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, and I will tell you that there is so much information that is flowing that I'm going to tell you the very best information that I have based on what I'm hearing out of Washington, and I do have a group within BB&T that kind of distills some of the larger pieces of it and chunks it down so that I can communicate that effectively to my experience with the SBA. I'm probably one of the more experienced SBA lenders, at least with BB&T in the Texas region, just because it is a lot more work
Mhm.
for a banker. And I'm not begrudging anyone, but you know, a lot of people look at that and they're just like, man, that's SBA. I'm going to move on. You know, I personally believe that, yeah, it's a lot more work. It's a lot more work for the banker. You shouldn't really throw that on the entrepreneur. But as a result of that, I've done small express SBA loans. I've done 7A loans, everything from the purchase of a practice to the construction of a building. I've done the SBA 504 loan, which is for real estate. So I'm pretty well versed in their requirements and criteria.
Yeah.
So what I want to talk to, so first and foremost, I want to talk about how I believe an entrepreneur should look at debt right now. Debt is not the answer to your business's problems. I understand that for some businesses, from restaurants that have lost 90% of their revenue, that's a very, very difficult thing to hear because they have no revenue coming in.
Yeah.
You have no revenue, you have no ability to pay staff, to pay rent, to pay utilities. First and foremost, I'm going to beg you to go back to the inside kernel, the strength that is inside you as the entrepreneur, and look how you can be creative. When you started your business, you didn't have a large market. You didn't have cash for a large marketing budget. You didn't have cash for a 100,000 square foot facility. You just didn't. You figure out what you've got the ability to do, and then you make those dollars act like $100. We've got one really quick example. We've got a restaurant here. It's called Blue Baker, and it's a chain in Bryan College Station. I think they've got some places in Austin, but they're like every other restaurant. They're shut down,
Mhm.
and what they've gone, they said, you know what? We've got relationship with food suppliers. We have to get cleaner. We have to get toilet paper. We're going to basically make a little bodega out of our restaurant. So you can come order your pizza, order your roasted veggie sandwich. And when you come to Blue Baker and pick it up, if you want some asparagus, some mushrooms, maybe some ham, you want some toilet paper, you want some window cleaner, you want some milk, you want some cheese, hey, we got it.
Yeah.
That is so cool that is something that they never would have thought of doing. And I'm not saying that that's the solution. It's for everybody. But what I'm saying is that creativity, first and foremost, you need to rely on only yourself as an entrepreneur. And so don't think that just because you can get easy and quick and cheap money doesn't mean that you need to take it. So I want you to hear that loud and clear.
Well, and I appreciate that. I mean, I think you look at just overall common sense, which some people avoid those conversations at this point, so reactionary. And so, especially in our world where we're talking about like tax planning and structure and stuff at other times of the year, obviously not right now. Common sense, like, that should win 99 times out of 100. And so, you kind of go back to your grandparents' mentality and say, okay, does this, this taking on this debt, I've got to pay it back sometimes. And I think there is misinformation in the market right now around even debt forgiveness. I think you've got a lot of people that are attaching and hoping for the best whenever they hear that they're going to go apply for this loan and pull out something to either pay themselves or pay their team or pay their bills, and it's going to get forgiven immediately, automatically. So you said some very key words that we want to talk about. You said maybe, and probably did it without thinking, but cheap, fast, and easy as far as money and SBA loans are concerned. And I think that is what people think right now. It's like, hey, I'm going to go down to BB&T and I need $100 million. So, hey, here's my signature. Give me that money. And yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I'll stick it in
I'll
the
pay it
bank.
back.
Maybe I'll use it. Maybe I won't. We'll see how it goes. I didn't have to make any hard decisions around my team. I didn't lay them off. I've got a little bit of cash. I can continue paying everybody like life is normal. I didn't want to have those conversations, but the government's going to save me. They're going to give me this lifeline. I'm going to eventually pay that back at 0% interest or such a low interest rate that we're going to get through this. I'm not ever going to remember that happened. I'm going to be back to normal, cranking and doing what I do. So talking about fast, cheap, and easy, man, that SBA loan application, that is not fast or easy. And I know that we're going to kind of point to you doing that yourself as a banker, as someone that's navigated those forms. I think you do it in about 45 minutes or an hour, and that's having prep time. And so the main thing is speak into that. What is looked at like it's not a boilerplate, yes, or at least I don't think it will be. And it's not, you're going to be qualified for the exact amount that you need because there's just limited resources. So speaking to that for a little bit for everybody.
Exactly. So there are two specific loan programs that we need to be talking about. The first one is the big one that most people are talking about. This is the disaster relief loan that's administered directly by the SBA. And I won't go into all the details, but suffice to say, it can be up to $2 million, a 12 months interest only, fixed interest rate of 3.75, 12 months interest only, and then between 10 and 30 years of repayment. All that sounds amazing.
It's awesome.
But
I'm going to go apply for one after we get off the phone, by the way. So
that's right. But this is for working capital. This is to help the entrepreneurs that don't have the revenue coming in to be able to have cash to sustain their business during this time. So this isn't a refinance deal, but this is a way that you can kind of go through it. And I'm not going to rehash the video, but the things you need to kind of work through and you truly need to balance. And this is a gigantic balancing act. Financial flexibility is maximum and is key in this situation. So, I'm going to be a typical banker right here, and I'm going to kind of speak out of both sides of my mouth. And here's really is my stance. I don't think that you should get debt if you don't have to, because that debt has to be paid back. Even if that debt has to be paid back at 0% interest, you have got somebody else telling you what to do with your cash every month. Versus if you have zero debt, you've got nobody telling you what to do with that cash, and you're able to control your destiny. But you have to have financial flexibility. So do the internal analysis. Go to Marcus, go to his team, go to the member of your team, the people that you surround yourself with, and actually be like, okay, if I take this money, what is this really going to mean? Because I'll talk about it in just a second. The second program sounds great on the front side, but you better be aware of the backside. But the SBA disaster relief program, that's administered directly by the SBA. One of the key things that you've got to do there, one, it is an application process. You are having millions of entrepreneurs apply for this. And what the SBA is going to look at I don't care what they say. This is not a rubber stamp. I've heard yesterday, a friend of mine is part of the restaurant group here in Bryan College Station, and he had a phone call with our state representative in Congress. And supposedly the SBA is Congress is telling the SBA to have within 36 hours of receipt of the information that they do an initial analysis, and then within 3 weeks of receipt of it, they've got either an approve or a decline. I don't even, that is not, that I don't care what you say. That's not possible.
So that's
The
3
only point.
weeks for the application and approval, not even cash, right?
That's right. But think about this. So the only point of reference I have is Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
And Katrina was a relatively isolated incident. It took up to 5 months for Katrina victims
Mm-hmm.
to get their cash. So I love that they're trying to push the SBA and to say you need to make a quick decision. And even if you rubber stamp stuff, there's no way, because all of that stuff is going to need to be documented. I mean, if you have a large loan and the SBA has those requirements of putting liens on houses and land and equipment and all that stuff, that cannot be done. I'm sorry. I mean, I hope and I pray that I am wrong, but that's not the case. So first off, entrepreneurs need to realize that this is a long-term process. This is not something that in 24 hours you're going to go sign a signature note and then get your cash.
Yeah.
But as you're going through this, again, the SBA is going to ask you for the last 3 years, what is your monthly revenue? And if you say, okay, for the last, let's say that your industry, Marcus, you probably see a spike in revenue during February, March, April, May timeframe, because that's when you're most busiest. That's when you're getting a lot of billables out. So if you're in that's in the time that we're in. So if you say, look, I'm making most of my money during this time, then the SBA is going to look at that and say, okay, well, we'll help replace that income through this loan.
Sure.
If you're in an industry that, if you are an industry, snow removal industry here in Texas, we don't really have that. But if you make most of your money in November, December, January, well, you're not really going to be impacted that much. So just because the money's out there doesn't mean that you're going to get it. But even with it, you've got to remember that you have to pay this back. So just because the SBA says that you get $250,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, you need to shrink down. You need to become the minimal, most viable version of your company. And if there's any way that you can work with your suppliers, your vendors, your customers, have them prepay, do something so that every dollar that you do not take from somebody is a dollar that you are putting into your own destiny and increasing your financial flexibility.
Yeah. And what, the conversations that we've had over the last few weeks, obviously FMLA, which we're not going to get into on this video. That's a whole nother video where we're going to work with our partners there, ADP, because we feel that they're the best at speaking of that. But with the conversations I've had where it's people kind of wavering on laying people off because There's potentially a payroll tax credit that's going to make them whole on paying their people during this time. And now there's potentially this new loan that if they pay their people with the money from those loan proceeds, that's ultimately going to get forgiven. But our recommendation for a lot of offices is still you're going to have to lay off or reduce workforce because that addresses cash flow immediately or shortly
Yes.
thereafter, because you're cash going out. I mean, it's just it goes back to all the common sense principles that we talk about with cash flow planning. And
Right.
it's how long is it going to take to get that money into your account, and what are the restrictions that are going to be placed upon you for signing that document? You
That's
mentioned
right.
a lien. A lot of people don't think about that. Like, they might have a lien already on some of their office equipment or their building or their practice as a whole or office as a whole if they have a general working capital already. So now you're going to have the SBA come in on top of all your other banking relationships and put a blanket lien on everything, correct?
That's correct. And so let's think about the second and third order effects of that once this is all done. If you go to a traditional lender after this, and the SBA is in first position on all those assets, and then you're asking another lender to be second, then potentially the other lender is going to say no unless they refinance this SBA loan. And this SBA loan may have a 20-year repayment term, but this other bank saying, well, look, I don't give 20 years for that type of stuff. The most I give is 8. And
Sure.
so if you want the money you're asking for, we're going to give you that money, refinance this. And now what you thought was a 20-year baked in easy, no problem, I can afford it all day long, is now an 8-year loan.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's just one potential example. And
Sure.
I want to circle back to 2 keywords that you said. If potentially, if this thing gets passed, and if we understand how this FMLA repayment or the payroll forgiveness is done, when it gets done, those are huge words. The
Mhm.
fact of the matter is we just don't know. And you would never make a business decision that if I said, hey, you can go ahead and you can spend $1 million, and if the people like your product, then they'll come.
Mhm.
You wouldn't make that business decision in the best of times. So why are you allowing yourself to be short-sighted with the potential forgiveness of these loans that maybe that we're going to trust? And the government has a responsibility and a huge aspect in this. But how many entrepreneurs out there would raise their hand and be like, I'm willing to put, my entire life in the hands of the government, and I'm going to let them dictate where I go?
Yeah.
No. I mean, you don't do that. You don't put your entire life in your hands into the hands of another entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So, that be very, very careful. And the fact is that we just don't know.
Yeah. And I think so. What's clouding a lot of people's decisions on where they go these next few weeks is this potential, this hope. And just like anybody in these times, we're holding out for what is that hope? What's the good news that's shared in amidst the sea of just negativity and fear mongering
Yeah.
and all that good stuff. So I get it. I want to be hopeful and all of that too. But I just want to give the best data, the best advice possible to the people that I care about, our clients and our team and the community around us. So, um, you know, I think speaking to realistically, let's say you have $1 million business, how much can you go qualify for on one of these SBA loans?
So a lot of that is going to depend. Again, with the SBA disaster relief loan, it's going to depend upon your revenue in a specific amount of time. And I honestly, I don't know, is that going to be historically looking at your March, April, May,
Mm-hmm.
June, July? And that is one of the uncertainties of unknown within the entrepreneur space. Like you said, I mean, the 2 trillion or the however much money is out there that's being allocated for the disaster relief program. You've got millions and millions of entrepreneurs that are going to be applying for this, and I know zero about how they actually approve and how they look at it. But if you think about it from a bureaucratic standpoint, they're going to sit there and whether you agree or disagree, I'm not here to debate that, but they're going to look at it and be like, okay, I can help one or two larger entrepreneurs, and I can fully fund their operations, and that will then in turn keep 20,000 employees working and going and doing what they need to do versus a 3-person shop. Yes, the dollar amounts are a lot less, but the impact is there. Again, the fact of the matter is I don't know what you can do, what you can apply for,
Yeah.
from the SBA standpoint. Now, let's kind of shift over and let's talk about the second part of the SBA program, which is what I believe is being voted on and signed into law, hopefully today. Again, it's the 25th. And that is going to provide, I think, $350 billion.
Yeah.
And that it will be through the SBA, but those loans, those funds are set aside to be with SBA partner banks.
Okay.
So it is in traditionally, and so this is where the bank would actually extend the loan, would give the banks cash, and then in the event that something goes wrong, the SBA would come in and say, okay, you gave a $500,000 loan. The client paid it down to $100,000, and then something happened. They went bankrupt. There's a potential loss. And so after all the collateral and everything has been collected, sold, and then that amount reduced, let's say there's $10,000 left over. Well, the SBA would come in and say, well, I'll pay 75% of that. And then the owners are then responsible for the other 25%. So in that instance, the bank is incented to do it because the bank's loss in the event of default, their risk is minimized.
Sure.
And so this is a way that the SBA is leveraging that money in order to energize the financial systems, the banks, in order to encourage them to lend. The program that I've specifically heard about this, and again, this could change and everything, and
Sure.
I don't know, but it's a $350,000 line of credit / loan, and this is a really, really cool thing. So it would be up to $350,000, a 2 years line of credit, meaning you can draw on it, pay it back, draw on it, pay it back, draw on it, pay it back. It's interest only during that time. It would be fixed at whatever the prime plus 1.5. So right now it would be fixed at 4.75%. And then after those 2 years of 24 months, then it automatically converts to a 5-year principal and interest loan.
Okay.
So if just kind of, rough math, if you fully max it out during those 2 years, I think it's about $500 or so a month. But this is what I'm talking about and being where the backside. If it's fully maxed out, when it flips to principal and interest payment, the payment's about $5,600 a month. And so that's what I'm talking about, that fast, easy, cheap money. It may be really good for 2 years, but if you do not have a plan in which you can afford $5,600, then you need to be really, you need to get past the initial, oh my gosh, Greg, I need cash now. I'll worry about paying it back later. I understand that mentality, but I'm begging you to seriously consider this, because if not, you are putting yourself in a hamstring 2 years down the road. And this is a really great program, and it is really, really good. But you need to be aware of it.
Yeah. And you talk about that 350,000 line of credit. That sounds awesome. I mean, there's guys like us, there's our clients that, who wouldn't want that just as a lifeline, whether we draw on it or not. But in reality, we've talked about something that's been approved for up to 350 billion, right? And we've got 350,000 is now this potential line of credit. Even though I'm an accountant, even though I have degrees that say I'm good at math and stuff, I'm a big picture guy, honestly. And so if I do the math right, 350 billion divided by 350,000, that's only 1 million loans. And so there's going to be way more than 1 million people that go out and apply for these. And yeah, you might have less than the 350,000, but I think that's what people don't realize whenever they hear like, oh, this is great. I've got $200,000 in cash and I've got some personal assets that I could use to kind of help get through this and have some of those hard conversations around my team or my vendors, my customers. But if I can go get $350,000 line of credit, maybe a portion of that 100,000 is what's been spoken about gets forgiven. Who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to be sold on that? Obviously, we're in a election year too, so I mean, that might be part of it.
Promises.
Exactly. So, but if I do the math right, and if that's a blunder, I look like an awful math and CPA at this point. But about $1 million is what I calculate. A million
A
different
million people.
and so, I mean, SBA, the website's crashing, it's flooded. There's way more than 1 million people applying for these loans. And so, that's why we come back to common sense, protect your house first, protect your team. The plane is in
Yes.
some turbulence, put your mask on first, and then help
Yes.
those around you. And that's why, the payroll tax credits on the FMLA side, like, yes, potentially. And then also now this lifeline, this $100,000 lifeline could get forgiven. This $350,000 line could be in place. You've got to, like, how many hurdles have we already talked about? Like, you've got to apply. One, the website has to be working. You've got to apply. You've got to be approved for a certain amount that you can actually use. And who knows? Like, there's a lot of variables that we're basing just hope on at this point. And not to
That's
be
right.
negative Nelly or whatever, but I think,
Let's be realistic though.
exactly. And I think that's why, radical candor and, candid conversations and just having those hard team member conversations and vendor conversations about, man, I would love the economy to come back online in Easter. It's probably not. We have slowed down to a pace that this is going to be months down the road. Some of our offices, some of our clients will open back up and scheduling will hit and pop. But even then, we've got a bubble now in the revenue pipeline. And that bubble from whenever we submitted claims or when we invoiced out, and then just the time it takes to get that revenue back up. I mean, you think about entrepreneurs that when they started their business, they might have had a little bit of working capital, but I mean, speaking for myself, when I started Dillon CPAs 9 years ago, man, like I was invoicing daily. Like, just get that invoice, get that paper
Yep.
out, because if it takes 30 to 45 days for that to turn into cash in my bank, like I got to do that. There's a lot that happens in life with having a family and having other people that you're responsible for within that 30 to 45 days. And
That's right.
I think it's awesome to see entrepreneurs being creative, like that restaurant you mentioned there in College Station, Brian, and you see some of that in the Houston area too. Whether regardless of the business, and I think people, you don't want to rely on the government at this point to be your main lifeline. Like, what can you be doing? What did you do to get your business like launched in the first place, and go back to some of those roots and act that way? I
Right.
know
Love it.
there's things that, it's just what makes the most sense. So I know we've talked about a lot today, and we've even touched on stuff that hasn't passed or hasn't been signed into law yet. But with what you're seeing, I see on that 350 billion, like, okay, there's a limited number of people that are going to qualify. And so if I were the government, if I were the BB&T, if I were the banking partner on that, am I going to extend the loan to maybe someone that really wasn't run their business the most conservative already? You know?
That's right. And because at this point, when you're underwriting or when you're getting that approved, then they're going to look back historically. And if historically you look back, and Marcus, you and I talk about this. I mean, I try to be very open book about how banks look at your business. I think that if you're going to be analyzed by somebody, you need to know the rules of the game by which you're playing.
Yeah.
And this is Greg talking. This is not BB&T. This is I am talking specifically me. Marcus, I don't know how I look at entrepreneurs. I can go and I can look historically, but I don't know. 2020 is not going to be the same as 2019, even in the most stable of environments. And so the question is I don't know. And as an entrepreneur, especially if you're applying for this SBA loan, they're going to look historically. And if historically you wouldn't qualify for anything more than 100,000, then they're not going to give you the 350 just because they have a government guarantee. Because even at a 90% SBA cover, they're still putting 10% of their own, the banks are putting 10% of their own cash and
Sure.
capital at risk. So they're going to be judicious about it. They're going to, because they have shareholders to respond to. When a bank forecloses and when a bank writes off a loan, it is the bank's shareholders, their equity goes down because that money has to come from someplace. I can't go take it from a depositor and be like, hey,
Yeah.
grandma, I'm really sorry. You put $25,000 into this CD, but I'm only going to let you take 20 out because Jimmy over in Dubuque, Iowa, or Des Moines, Iowa, had defaulted on his loan. So if you want your $5,000, go get it from him. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that you do have someone else looking at your business. But and again, these loans can help, but take power in your own hands, and entrepreneurs to be able to work with your team and find out how you can be flexible without taking on loans or liabilities that then you have someone else speaking into your business.
Yeah, and I know that you can maybe speak into this too. We didn't talk about this at all, but has anything changed as far as the ratios and requirements that you like because of these SBA loans and because of now this potentially new, like maybe someone that wasn't a great credit risk on the front end of this, has some of that eased, if any, in the last few
Right.
weeks?
The answer is, the upfront answer is I don't know.
Okay.
Because in order for me to even make that assessment, then I'm really, what I've got to apply it on is I've got to apply it on the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
And shoot, this has been going on. I mean, it longest case, probably a month, maybe on the coast, we've had businesses that are affected a month. So how I understand and how this really impacts cash flow, I don't know. What I will say is that now more than ever, look, what I am having conversations about clients that have active loan requests, I'm having conversations about liquidity.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you going to sustain yourself through this time? And if you don't have liquidity, and you have to have a bank or an SBA loan in order to even survive, then that's a lot higher risk than before. I mean, that's always been a major factor, but it's a huge factor now because of uncertainty. And then flexibility within your operational costs. It's one thing to say, I've got one client that is that works in a service industry, and it's all 1099 employees. So he works from home.
Mm-hmm.
So, his variable costs are literally like 97% of his overhead. If he doesn't sell, those 1099 employees don't get paid. And so he's able to adjust. But if you've got an entrepreneur that's got a higher amount of fixed costs, I've got 5 locations that I have rent at, that I've got to have insurance on, that I've got to have inventory, stacked up constantly going through that. And then you start talking about, okay, well, how is your inventory supply chain going to be disrupted through this? How do you have enough inventory on hand to fulfill your orders? Do the people that you're sending the orders to, are they going to pay? Are they starting to slow pay you? So it's all these things that are heightened even more. So I know that I kind of went off on a nerd tangent there and started talking about it. But the fact of the matter is I don't know. But if you have got cash, you have a plan in place that you can kind of go through and talk to your banker about, okay, if once I get to X, then that means I'm cutting these expenses. That means I'm telling these 3 people that they're going to have to go from 40 to 20 hours a week. That means I've got to go tell this one person that I'm having to furlough them.
Sure.
It's having that plan. Even if you don't have to execute on that plan, I'm begging my entrepreneurs to come up with that plan so that they can work through the emotions of that plan before they have to then go be a leader and execute that plan. Uncertainty and the fear of the unknown is crippling at least if you have a plan, you can be like, this sucks. I hate this plan. I don't want to do it, but you have a plan.
Yeah, and what we've seen, man, brings up a great point. We've seen so much wavering, and I know I mentioned that earlier. It's people, they get a little bit of info from this source, and then they hear something over here, and then they kind of turn their head, and their whole plan, they feel like they need to adjust because, oh, well, there's a potential, like, I might miss out on $100,000 free loan from the government. Not even, let's back up. Like, who's going to pay for that loan? And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, they're going to have to raise taxes to get us out of this whole mess, or we've just grown big government even more. So that's another discussion for another day. But it's one of those, like, they pivot and they start to question themselves. And so I think how we've tried to keep most of our entrepreneurs, most of our business owners on track is, you've got, like, what can you do today? What's the one decision that you've made? You've got to live by that decision and rely on the relationships that you've built in this, man. I know you're a relationship banker, just given our, relationship, and relationships are so important right now because communication is going to be the kind of the grease that keeps this machine going, the business going throughout these times. And so it's relying on the trusted relationships. I've had clients forward me emails or Facebook articles or mention us in groups, and it's an outlandish potential, or maybe it's not even outlandish. Maybe it's been actually discussed by somebody, but it's not passing the law yet. It's not been proven. And so I think it's entrepreneurs, business owners, even individuals, maybe that are worried about their stock portfolio. Their biggest job right now is kind of filtering through the mess and going to protected information sources. I feel like we're a protected information source. We kind of vet and we push it out as we've digested it, how it applies to most of our client base. I know that you're that for your customers. I look at the other, big payroll shops as far as FMLA or HR. I look at Paychecks. I look at those guys, people that have all the resources in the world, and they're going to get it right, or they're not going to speak into it. And, I think Facebook, social media, whatever you're getting your info from, CNBC, Fox News, whatever, your biggest job right now is to be that filter, I think. And I know that there's so much promise, and we're hopeful. We just want to go back to business as normal. Like, I think most of my clients don't even
we all do.
Yeah, don't even care. And that's going to be the awesome thing on the back end of this, that we're so much stronger and that we're so much more thankful for our clients after the fact, man. Like, so there's going to be people, I think you're probably in the same situation, that if they were struggling before, cash flow wise or profit wise, or just maybe didn't have the right business acumen, it's tough to say that, but they're probably not going to survive this on the other side. There's going to be
statistically speaking, you're right.
There's going to be some hard decisions to make, and the market's going to, the free market's going to do its thing. And, there's going to be some hard decisions, some disasters as those families are concerned. But the people that have led conservative lives, led conservative businesses, done everything that you have kind of poured into them, that I've spoken into, and that their other trusted advisors, they're going to see so many opportunities in the near future on the other side of this, that, man, like, they're going to set themselves up for generational success potentially. And so I think you're giving the same advice that we would, like, turn over every stone, I think. But not every stone is right for every person. And, there might be someone behind you that needs that stone more than you. So unless you really need this loan, unless you can qualify for it, like, maybe leaving that for your community partner, the business next door, because that is truly their lifeline. Like, that's all they got. And because you've got some cash sitting in the bank, because you might have to make some hard decisions, what other businesses are you going to kind of trickle down, and maybe they can survive this as well? So
I agree. And I agree with the the value that you guys have of being advisors and being open-handed with information and help. And as an entrepreneur, to be able to say, we are all in this together. I mean, if this ecosystem, if this exercise and understanding what your ecosystem is done nothing else to know that you've got a lot of partners, and to be able to speak in and to give them support and to help them. We got to get through this together. But I think the next 10 months will dictate what the next 10 years of your success will be.
Yeah. So I know we've covered a broad variety of things today. If you were to leave, maybe only one person views this, and maybe it's my mom. Who knows? Like,
Hey, Mom.
Exactly. If we were to leave one business owner with a word of encouragement or just a piece of advice, what would you say? Like, what would that be for you?
The number one thing, I'm going to go back to kind of what I started out with, and just being very appreciative and thanking the entrepreneurs. Go back to your dream and your passion. Why did you start this business, and who did you rely on when you started? You relied on your faith, you relied on your family, and you relied on your team. And to be able to come together and to demonstrate your creativity, your grit, and your ability to adapt and overcome obstacles, that is what's going to get you through. It's not going to be a handout loan. It's not going to be anything. It's going to be you, and continue to pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. I just want you to hear that loud and clear, that you can do this, and we will get through this together. But you rely on the people you surround yourself with, and let's make the best decisions that we can to support you long term. Let's not make short term decisions that cripple you long term.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you. I know that you're dealing with a lot of client phone calls and trying to just set people up for success, just like we are over here. But I appreciate your time today, man. I'm sure we'll have multiple conversations, maybe even another video together as we learn more about the 350, and
I love
maybe
that.
I would love to say that we were wrong. I would
Yes.
love to say that this money will flow in from some orchard of money trees, and everything will be okay, and we'll be, sipping Mai Tais on the beach somewhere. But that we've just got to take it one.
I'm gonna write that down. All right, we got 5 years, and then
We'll see, man.
Greg and Sarah, Marcus and Rachel sipping Mai Tais at a beach.
Man, I would love to. So I know that much like everybody that's impacted with travel right now, like Rachel and I always have a trip. We got word that was officially canceled because we can't travel into Mexico in the month of May. But, we'll have to figure out. I know that there's a real big push now to spend that money here locally and in the U.S. So
That's
definitely
right.
advocating for that too. Let's get our economy back and jump started stronger than ever before after all of this, man. So once again, I appreciate you, Greg. I'm gonna put your videos in the notes of this. That way people can go see you actually apply for an SBA loan and all the fun that was in that video. And
I'm such a nerd. I did that on the weekend.
Man, what we do on weekends helps our entrepreneurs get through their week. So I think
That's exactly right.
I think that's just what we feel we're called to do. And I appreciate you taking the time today, man. So stay safe, wash your hands. In a few days, hopefully my barber opens back up. It looks like yours is still open.
We're good. No problem.
All right, man. Well, take it easy. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks.
Bye.